Very impressed.
Turn it down.
Breadcrumbs.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Have we started?
Yes.
Okay, we started. All right, listen.
Well, we started.
Tonight's a Chassidus Shivin, and though we're here in Los Angeles, what's really going on is that we've arrived at Har Sinai. We came to Har Sinai just now. And it says when the Jewish people came to Har Sinai, they were like one person with one heart. And Hashem said, now I can give you the Torah because now you're like one person with one heart. So we're sitting together, we're eating, we're drinking, and we're saying l'chaim, wishing each other well. This is the best way to prepare to get the Torah. To sit and say l'chaim and to connect with other Yidden is the number one thing you could do to prepare for the giving of the Torah. So I want to dedicate our shir tonight, the Farbrengen tonight, is in honor of Yossi Reber's birthday, to l'chaim, shavashnas hatzlacha, the gashmius of ruchnius, chassidische nachas and yedin from the kinder and from the inneklach, the chashiris muflaga, l'chaim v'racha. And there's also another Jew, before we get to Kol Amo Yisrael, there's also Michal David Freeman over here who is working hard in technical support. His birthday is yesterday. So l'chaim Michal David and your wife should have only good bonachaims and vichel kumer vichel. L'chaim l'bracha. So speaking of eating and saying l'chaim, we find something unusual about the Yontif of Shavuos. There's an argument in the Gemara about whether or not you have to eat a meal on Yontif. The argument is between Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya and Elazar ben Hurkanus. Elazar ben Hurkanus says that you don't have to necessarily eat a meal on Yontif. It's okay if you don't eat on Yontif. Maybe on Pesach you have to eat some matzah, but you don't have to eat a meal just because it's Yontif. And Yeshua ben Chananya disagrees. No, there's a mitzvah to eat. Where is this argument coming from? Why do they argue? It says in the Torah, Atzeres tia lachem. Atzeres means to hold back, hold yourself back from working. And this should be a day where you're not working, and it's a day for you, a day that you could celebrate. So some focus on that verse, says tia lachem, it should be for you. And therefore the day of Yom Tov is a day that's for you, to eat, to drink, to celebrate. Atzeres tia lachem. Hold yourself back from working, don't work, and just enjoy. But there's another pasuk. Another pasuk says, Atzeres la Hashem. Hold yourself back from working for the sake of Hashem. So therefore, how do you do it for the sake of Hashem? For the sake of Hashem, you learn Torah, you daven, you do things which are godly, which are spiritual, which are holy. You don't get involved in gashmis and the physical. You just do things for Hashem. Do these two verses here. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, he says, simple, two verses. We have to take out both of them. So from one verse we learn that you have to part of the day designated to serve Hashem, only for Hashem. Part of the day you do for yourself. So you go to a shul, you daven, you learn Torah, and then you go home and you eat. It's one opinion. Other opinion is it's optional. Optional. You have to make a day of Yontif for Hashem. You have to eat, you have to drink, you have to celebrate. And you could do it if you want, but you don't have to. You could do is just stay in shul all day and learn and daven and just dedicate yourself to Hashem. You don't have to do anything for yourself. You don't have to. So Elazar ben Hurkanus, his opinion is you don't have to just learn Torah. And actually, Elazar ben Hurkanus, in his yeshiva, he demanded this from his students. He told his students that they have to stay in shul. They finish davening in his yeshiva. After they finish davening, what happens? They want to go home and eat. Elazar Hurkanus says, where are you guys going? We're going home to eat. Why going home to eat? Well, it's Yontif. We invited guests. We're having people coming over. We did our Jewish praying holy thing now. Now we're doing our Jewish holy eating thing. You know, what's every Yontif? What did they say? They tried to kill us, and Hashem saved us. Now let's eat. Shavuos is actually unique. Shavuos is the one holiday you'd expect that there would be no mitzvah to eat, because Shavuos is not about God saving our lives. Shavuos is one Yontif which is about God giving us the Torah. So you'd expect Shavuos to be the one Yontif where the way to celebrate it would be just to focus on studying Torah and studying Torah only. And yet this Yontif, we find that is a mitzvah, even according to Blazer ben Hurkanus, that you have to eat on Shavuos. In general, he says it's optional, but Shavuos is the exception. Before we understand the Blazer ben Hurkanus a little better, let's go back to let's try to understand his whole, who he was. Blazer ben Hurkanus wrote a sefer, Pirkei Rav Eliezer, and in the introduction to the sefer is a story of his life. He had 5 brothers. He and his brothers, and actually altogether I think there was 5 brothers. He had 4 brothers. So he and his brothers, they worked for their father. They had these great fields, and they worked so hard in the fields, and they were very successful. And Blazer ben Hurkanus, one day his father sees him, and he's not working. So his father says, "Yo, what's up?" He says, "Listen, Dad, this is just boring. It just doesn't talk to me. I want to do something else." His dad says, "Just go home, sleep a little bit. Tomorrow you'll feel better, and tomorrow we'll party, and you'll work hard, and you'll have a great time." All right, Dad. He goes home. Next day he comes back, and he still looks very upset. He's not working. His dad says, "What's going on? Why don't you start working?" So he says, "I'm not working because I just can't do this anymore. This just doesn't talk to me. I want to study Torah." And his father thought that wasn't a great idea. He says, "You want to study Torah? Why don't you just go to Tveria and walk there and study Torah?" "Oh, great idea." So the next day he walked until he came to the yeshivas, and he started learning Torah there. Where Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai was his Rebbe. Actually, Yochanan Zakkai, when Yerushalayim was under siege, and Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai wanted to go out to speak to the emperor, so no one was allowed to leave. But Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, he pretended that he had died, and he took 2 students out with him to bury him. His 2 closest students, Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya and Blazer ben Hurkanus. So Rabbi Blazer ben Hurkanus arrives in Yochanan Zakkai's yeshiva, and he has no money, nothing. And although it was a yeshiva, it wasn't like there was a place of businessmen, but he was worse off than everybody else. And he didn't have anything to eat at all. So Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai once was walking past him, and he smelled a bad odor coming from his mouth. He hadn't eaten for such a long time that he just smelled. And Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai said to him that just like this bad odor is coming from your mouth, I promise you that one day your Torah will spread to the whole world. And that's what happened. His diligence was unparalleled, and he became the greatest tzaddik of the generation, Blazer ben Hurkanus, and in his yeshiva, he expected the same. So after davening was over, his students want to go Farbrengen and their families and eat and drink, and he's like, "Where are you guys going?" So they stayed a little bit longer, and then one row of students quietly exited through the back door. Blazer ben Hurkanus says, those guys, he made fun of them. He said, they probably prepared these big barrels of wine. And they have these big barrels of wine, so they want to eat their wine, so that's why they left. Like, good riddance. A little while later, another bench empties. Blazer ben Hurkanus says, these people, they probably prepared smaller barrels. That's why they left now. They have to want to finish there. And then a little while later, another bench empties. These guys probably prepared little jugs. That's why they left. Then another group leaves. They probably prepared little cups of wine. That's why they had to leave now. But eventually, the last group is there. The last group is hungry, and it's time for the last group to go. They all get up to go, and he curses them. And they're like, "Rabbi, what do you want? Like, what do we do wrong? Doesn't it say in the Torah, Atzeres Lachem? It's a yontif for you." He says that's optional. That's optional. And he expected them to have the same level of diligence as himself. So that's not the point I want to bring out. The point I want to bring out is exactly the opposite. This shows you how amazing the Yontif of Shavuos is. Yontif of Shavuos is halacha like this. Halacha is, even with Blazer ben Hurkanus, on Shavuos you have to eat. Not only that, not only have to eat, there's something about Shavuos that obligates us to eat more than any other Yontif. It's a halacha like this. Let's say a person goes to sleep Friday night and has a bad dream. Wake up in the morning, you feel this dream is a premonition of something, So you really shouldn't feel that way, because our dreams are all just a bunch of WhatsApp messages and internet and television and narishkeit. So you shouldn't feel bad about having a bad dream. They don't really mean, it doesn't mean much. The Rebbe said that also we do Birchas Kainim every so often. So if you're worried about your dream, a few days we're doing Birchas Kainim, so don't worry about your dreams. But let's say you do worry about your dream. Let's say your dream bothers you. Let's say you're not able to internalize that thought that your dreams are meaningless, and you are bothered by your dream. So you're allowed to fast on Shabbos because it's considered pleasure for you. Not considered pleasure for anybody else, but for you, because this is weighing on you. So halacha says it's okay for you to fast because that's pleasure. Every yontiv, pleasure of fasting for a dream overrides the pleasure of eating, except for one yontiv, except for the yontiv of Shavuos. On Shavuos, you have a bad dream, take Prozac. You cannot allowed to fast. Shavuos, you have to eat on Shavuos. No such thing as fasting for a dream. It's a mitzvah to eat. But the question is, why is it so important to eat on Shavuos? Shavuos is a yontiv, a spiritual yontiv. We got the Torah. Rashi writes, the reason you have to eat is because it's noyach. You show you're happy you got the Torah, therefore you eat. Why don't you show you're happy that you got the Torah by learning Torah? Why is this the only yontiv that it's a mitzvah to eat more than any other yontiv? Before we get into that, let's talk about milchiks for a second. Why it's a mitzvah to eat dairy on yontif, dairy on Shavuos?
Because it was a legendary day.
Wow.
You got the Torah, didn't have time to...
There's several reasons given. Let's discuss 3 or 4 of them. One reason given is as follows. Every food has a positive good part in it, and has a part in it which isn't so good. Honey has a part that's tasty, and when in the process of making honey, there's also parts that you throw out. Wine, a good part of wine, the part you throw out. But milk, every part of the milk has a benefit. Part you can use cheese, sour cream, milk. And in our house we have blue, red, and green milk. The baby needs to have the red milk, and then people in the middle have the blue milk, and people who are supposed to be on a diet have the green milk. Milk has a benefit, and every part of milk has a benefit. So too is this with Torah in comparison to other wisdoms. Every wisdom has a positive benefit to it, but it can also have something negative. You could study science, and you can learn a lot about the world, and learn about Hashem creating the world, but you could also get arrogance because of that. You could also, the wisdom might make you question, instead of reinforcing your emunah as it should, it's possible that your study could make you challenge the things you believe in. The Torah is totally good. It's possible to learn Torah for the wrong reasons, but Torah itself is kol kulei tev, is only good. Torah brings goodness to a Jewish home. A house where Torah is studied is a different kind of house. I'll tell you a story. Yossi Reber gives a daf yomi here, and the last daf yomi siyum, attended by thousands of people in Los Angeles, and many more times that in Eretz Yisrael, all over the world in daf yomi siyum, Jews all over the world celebrating the daf yomi. There was an article in this newspaper about the daf yomi. It was very interesting, more than the amount of people that attended and the great speakers that came. It was an interesting letter from this woman to the newspaper. She says, this weekend, not only is my husband finishing the daf yomi, also my children and I are finishing daf yomi. How is she finishing daf yomi? What is she talking about? She said like this. My son was in 8th grade. In 8th grade, he wasn't behaving that well, and he got kicked out of school. Now, in schools nowadays, before you get kicked out, it's her son got kicked out of school. Her son's in 8th grade. And he's kicked out of school, so his brother in 5th grade doesn't want to go to school because his older brother got kicked out of school. It's embarrassing. You're the guy whose brother got kicked out of school, right? Oh, so he doesn't want to go to school either. So his younger brother in 1st grade doesn't want to go to school either. So you have 3 kids at home. And because you have 3 kids at home, her husband doesn't want to go to work. It's depressing. So he doesn't want to go to work. And you have 3 kids at home, and there's a whole, a snowball effect of his kid getting kicked out of school. So she and her husband were talking one day. She said, we have to do something out of the box. We have to do something with Mesiras Nefesh. We have to show Hashem that we really care, do something that's extraordinary. What could we do? So he tells his wife, I was going to tell this to you, but I saw that they are beginning the Daf Yomi again, and they're starting a class in our neighborhood at 7 o'clock. And I know 7 o'clock is a critical time to be home. That's when the showers are and bedtime is and everything, and homework. And I know that it would be difficult for you. I was going to ask you about attending this shir. But now that you're saying that this is what you want to do, let me tell you about this class. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you want me to go to this class? She says, yes, I want you to go to this class. And he starts going to the Daf Yomi class. He's going to Daf Yomi every day at 7 o'clock, and the whole household suddenly revolved around that class. Oh, we can't go to this wedding till 8:30, although all of our cousins are going, because we have to finish the Daf Yomi class. And we can't go on. We have to come back from this trip earlier because we have to get in time for the 7 o'clock. And so when is Dad coming home? Well, Dad left the Daf Yomi. So it started a snowball effect in the positive sense that there's an atmosphere of Torah in the house. That when a father makes a shir Torah, not just for himself, when father sets a time to study Torah, it affects him, his family, his children, his grandchildren, everyone around him. Torah is like milk. It's called Kulei Tev, totally good. Rabbi Cohen from Melbourne, Australia, he told me he was once had a private audience with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, Chassidus, more Torah, more bracha. More Torah, more blessing. Torah is called Kulei Tev. Torah is like milk. It's totally good. That's one reason we have milk. Now, the second reason is the angels said to Hashem, why are you giving the Jewish people the Torah? We should get the Torah. So there's one response in the Gemara, a famous response where Moshe tells them, why should you get the Torah? You don't have Yetzer Hara. You're not living among people that you need to be warned not to steal. You're never in Egypt. What does the Torah have to do with you? But there's another explanation, not as famous, but pretty famous too. The Medrash says that the angels said to Hashem, we want to get the Torah, and Hashem responds, I gave you guys a chance. It didn't work. I gave you one chance to get the Torah, and you didn't keep it, and that's it. What was our chance to keep the Torah? You got a chance when you visited Abraham. You visited Abraham, and you were served milk and meat, and you ate milk and meat together. So from now on, you have no right to Torah. Now the truth is, there are ways to explain how the angels didn't transgress the Torah. The Ben Ish Chai says something amazing. Ben Ish Chai says, Michal Mordechai is Michal David Freeman is very into Ben Ish Chai. He says like this. He says that Abraham stood over his guests while they were eating. Why were you standing over his guests? So he says like this. He says that Abraham gave them first milk, and then he gave them meat. So between milk and meat, there are many opinions about what you have to do in between. Some say just wash your mouth out. Some say wait a half hour. Some say wait an hour.
6 hours.
Who are you talking to? Talk to more lenient rabbis, please. Okay, so the Ben Ish Chai says Avram Avinu was standing over his guests. Why was he standing over his guests? Because he served them milk. He wanted to serve them meat, but he wanted to make sure they wouldn't eat the meat until the amount of time passed. They had to wait a half hour, or they had to wait an hour. He wanted to make sure that they had the conversation with them and talk with them so they shouldn't eat the meat. So actually Avram was helping them that they should keep the Torah, and they kept the Torah then according to the Ben Ish Chai. So there is a deeper way of understanding that same story. I don't know if everyone has enough patience for the deeper way. I'll say it very quickly. There's an argument in Gemara between Rav and Shmuel about when two things, dairy and meat, intermingle, and one is hot and one is cold, at what point do we say that they're halachically considered cooked together? One opinion is, if the bottom mixture, if the thing on the bottom is hot, it's considered hot. The other opinion is, if what's falling is hot, then it's considered hot and considered cooked. So let's say you have a drop of milk falling on a piece of meat, and the drop of milk is hot. So according to the opinion which says the main thing is what's on top, so since the hot thing is on top, so it's considered like the milk went all the way through and permeated the meat, and the whole thing is treif. The other opinion is that the main thing is what's on bottom. If the meat was cold, just because the milk is hot, you don't have to get rid of the meat, just peel off the top layer of the meat, and the rest is okay. Now, the angels were saying to Hashem, we want to get the Torah. Why? because the most important thing is spirituality and holiness. And we got a lot of that stuff. So Hashem responded to them with the story of Avram. How does the story of Avram answer what they were saying? The halacha is, the main thing is that what's on the bottom, not what's on the top. The main thing is that if the bottom is hot, then it's considered hot. The top is hot, doesn't matter that much. If the top is hot, you just peel off a layer. In Kabbalah it says that milk is connected to kindness, and meat has to do with justice. So you want kindness to overweigh justice. And how do you do that? If you have milk and then you have meat, so what's first in your stomach, what's on the bottom of your stomach, is the milk. And the meat is put on top of the milk. So the kindness overwhelms the justice. You have kindness before justice, kindness overwhelms justice. If you say the main thing is on the bottom, so that's good to have milk before meat. But if you say the main thing is what's on the top, so then why does it help to have the meat before the milk? On the contrary, the meat on the top is going to change the milk, and it's going to leave the justice, and the justice won't be sweetened by the kindness. So the very fact that the angels are saying that they should get the Torah because they kept the Torah, because they added milk before they ate the meat, is itself a disproof of why they should get the Torah, because having milk before meat only works if you say the main thing is what's on the bottom. And if the main thing is on the bottom, then this world is the most important world, because this is the world where we do things in the physical world, and they don't get to do that. Okay, so another reason, this is the most fascinating reason to me of why we eat milk on Shavuos. I can say another one after this, but this is the one I like the most. You can like whatever one you like. This is my most favorite reason. Moshe Rabbeinu is born, and the astrologers say that there's going to be a baby born, and he's going to take the Jews out of Egypt. Paro, you got to get rid of all the Jewish boys. So what does Paro do? He does that. He gets rid of all the Jewish boys. What does Amram do? Amram gets divorced or separated from his wife, because his wife should have babies. All the babies are going to get killed. No point in having babies. So Amram's daughter, Miriam, Moshe's sister, he says, you're worse than Pare. Pare only said to kill the Jewish boys. By separating from Mami, you're going to prevent there from being any girls either. So Amram realizes his daughter is right. Now, when Amram separated from his wife, all the Jewish people separated from their wives. Now listen, the Egyptian policemen would take Egyptian babies with them, and they would travel around Egypt, and they would pinch their babies, hoping that when the babies would cry, they would discover any babies in the house. Because when a baby hears another baby cry, a baby starts to cry. So the Egyptians realized when Amram and his wife separated, which he was the leader of the Jewish people, so when he separated, they all separated, they realized they have a vacation. They have a vacation. Because when he listened to his Miriam and he remarried his wife, it would take at least 9 months for there to be a baby. So they don't have to patrol for 9 months. But Moshe Rabbeinu was born after 7 months. So his parents don't have to hide Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th day of Adar. His parents don't have to hide him because he's safe. There's no policeman running around. But when 9 months passed after Amram remarried his wife, which was after 9 months, which is the 6th day of Sivan, which is the day the Torah was given, then the Egyptians are going to start patrolling again, and he has to get rid of this baby before they come around. So what does he do? He puts the baby in the basket in the Nile River, and Miriam goes along, and Miriam follows along, and Paro's daughter discovers the baby, and Paro's daughter wants Moshe Rabbeinu to nurse from the Egyptian with nursemaids, and Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't, because Hashem said it cannot be that the mouth that's going to speak to the divine presence is going to nurse from anyone else but his mother, and therefore Miriam realizes what's going on. She says, I know what's going on. This baby must be. He should use his mind to study Torah, and he should study Torah instead. And he should become a dayan. He should get a higher level of smicha, and that's what he did. But he wanted to do something in the realm of outreach. So what did he do? So in Crown Heights, every so often they have this thing called Pekisha, an encounter with Chabad. Students come for Shabbos. He told his wife, let's do this. And he and his wife, every Pekisha, they told the organizers, we'll take as many students as you want. We're going to open our house. And one Shabbos, they had 2 girls staying at their house, and they're talking about different things, and the subject, these girls don't know much about Judaism, and they talk about kosher. And they talk about the laws of kosher, and he mentions the law of eating milk and meat. That's interesting. Milk and meat, that's interesting. You can't have milk and meat. Okay. So how does that work? Well, once you eat meat, you have to wait for 6 hours to eat milk. 6 hours, okay. So they finish eating the soup and the chicken, and then his wife brings out the ice cream. And they're like, no, we don't. They look at each other. We're not going to eat that. And they're like, and his host is like, why not? Why would you eat ice cream? Who says no to ice cream? It's not one of the 613 commandments, but seichel. So why say no to the ice cream? So they said, because this is just a test. You wanted to see if we were listening before. We know after meat, no milk. So after meat, no ice cream. This is just a test, and we passed it, didn't we? So he starts laughing. He says, no, it's not a test. After meat, there's no milk. But this ice cream is parif. What's parif? This ice cream is made out of this, is made out of that, and so it's parif. There's no dairy ingredients in this ice cream. That's amazing. Wow. Okay. 2 weeks later, they get a letter from one of the girls. Letter says like this: thank you so much for the hospitality. We love being at your house. We saw the way you treated your children. We saw the way you and your wife interacted. We wish ourselves that we could ever once have a house like this. This is amazing. Just one thing, P.S. My mother is so enthralled by the concept of parif ice cream. Can you please give me the recipe? Okay. So Rabbi Gutnick is very excited about this. He decides he's going to give this letter to the Rebbe. Not because he expected the Rebbe to answer the letter, but he thought the Rebbe would have nachas from this. They did one mitzvah, and this mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, and they're excited about it, and they're so excited, they're having parif ice cream already. You know how far in Judaism they've got already. They're not eating meat and milk. I don't know if they're up to eating kosher yet, but they're up to separating meat and ice cream, and it's fantastic. The Rebbe responds to the letter. Right away that day, the Rebbe responds to the letter. The Rebbe said, Yamshich Yeshura, you continue the connection with them, and Ba'ifan Amasa. What the Rebbe recognized, and for him instruction in life, was the way to a man's soul is through his stomach, through his mouth. So, when the Torah is telling us about Har Sinai and celebrating the Torah, the way to celebrate the Torah is God brings himself from heaven to Mount Sinai. But that's just stage 1. Stage 2 is Hashem wants us to come from Mount Sinai to us, to our lives, to our families. What's the best way to get your family to sit around the table? These 2 mothers are discussing this. One mother says to the other, it's just not possible anymore. Everyone's on their tablet, on their iPhone, it's impossible. Other mother says, I have a very simple way of doing it. I just disconnect the router, and all of a sudden, everyone's like, who disconnected the router? And they get their attention. But the only way to get everyone to sit is food. You sit together. 1989, I mentioned this on Shabbos, the Rebbe said, I have a kosher nafshis, a request to my soul, that in Erev Rosh Chodesh Shivon, right before Rosh Chodesh Shivon, that year Parshas Midbar was on Rosh Chodesh Shivon was on Sunday. So Parshas Midbar was Erev Rosh Chodesh Shivon. It was right before the day when the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai like one man with one heart. That's my request for my soul, and even more, that people should sit together and eat together. And when they eat together, say l'chaim together, they'll increase their Avos Yisrael, they'll increase their love for each other, and talk about Avos Yisrael, which is what we're doing now. So the key to getting the Torah isn't just you're studying the intellectual Torah, to bring it down, bring your family around there, making everyone involved in it. What's the way to do that? It's ba'ina nami l'chem. You have to bring it in a physical way by involving your family and eating together. There was a sculptor, his name was Jacques Lifshitz. And before he passed away, he had a lot of interaction with the Rebbe. At one point, the Rebbe said to him, your job as a sculptor reflects the mission of a Jew in this world. A sculptor takes a rock, piece of metal, and he takes this rock and he turns it into something beautiful, something that's alive. Takes this rock and makes a dog out of it, makes a bear out of it, makes a human out of it. He does something out of this. Of course, there are many halachas about what you're allowed to do and when is considered an idol, but the idea of a sculptor is that you're taking something which is inanimate and you bring life to it. And so each of us, we're the same. Hashem put us in this world, in a physical world, which doesn't you don't see any godliness in it, you don't see any holiness in it. And a Yid, a Jew, has to infuse the chicken, the sushi, the chips, the l'chaim, with spirituality. A Yid is a sculptor. He's taking something inanimate and making something spiritual out of it. And what's the key to do that? The key to do that, a very great way, is by eating together. the Rebbe spoke in 1974, how people talk about families and families separating from each other and difficulties of bringing families together and kids going away and rejecting Yiddishkeit. The Rebbe said the most important thing is that the families have to have harmony and be as a family unit. And what's the way to create the family unit? It says, they have to eat together on Shabbos. When a family eats together, people say when the families that pray together, stay together. Families that eat together, stay together, eat and pray together. And eat, the Rebbe said, they eat on a Shabbos table. And they discuss concepts about that are Shabbostic, that are appropriate for Shabbos. That is what cements the family together. So the key of preparation for the Torah is Avos Yisrael, connecting with other Yidden, and saying L'chaim together. It says when the Jews got on Rosh Chodesh Shivan, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. Probably didn't do anything because they were Farbrengen. They were sitting together, saying L'chaim together, singing together. The main thing is we should prepare for the giving of the Torah, the Avos Yisrael, Kishacha B'Lev Echad, and this should be a preparation for not just the giving of the Torah, but to get the main Torah Chadash M'Diteitze with Mashiach Tzedekenu. L'chaim, L'chaim, V'racha.